In July of 2021, a 62-year-old job applicant of Indian descent applied for a sales director position at a multinational technology consulting company called HCL America. He was qualified. The hiring team thought so too, until the company exchanged emails with its recruitment firm. In one of those emails, the company stated in writing that the candidate was, and I'm quoting from the EEOC's lawsuit, too old. The company then asked the recruiter to instead, and again I'm quoting, explore diverse candidates. That candidate did not get the job. A younger, non-Indian candidate did. On April 2nd of 2026, HCL America, well, they agreed to pay $495,000 to settle the EEOC's lawsuit. They will also have a third-party consultant review their hiring policies. They're going to retrain their managers and recruiters, and hopefully, they presumably will stop putting too old in writing. Now, here's the part that you might want to pay attention to. HCL America, well, they got caught because somebody put it in writing. How many times does the same conversation happen in your organization without the inconvenience of a paper trail? This is 5 Shades of Grey, episode 4, the 4th shade? Oof. Ageism, the last socially acceptable bias. All right. 5 Shades of Grey. This is the Leadership Now Takeover. My name is Dan Pontefract. New book coming out. The Future of Work is Grey. Now let's talk about the word ageism. It was coined in 1968 by a psychiatrist and a gerontologist. His name was Robert Butler. And he did so in an interview with a very young Washington Post reporter who would shortly thereafter become rather famous for other reasons. That reporter's name was Carl Bernstein. I mean, who could remember? Watergate? Yeah. Okay, so back to Butler. So he defined ageism in this interview as the prejudice and discrimination experienced by older people. He had a 1975 book called Why Survive? Being Old in America. In it, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, he's sort of romanticizing the American childhood about the idolization of youth, making middle age do the work, and treating old age as if it were in the way. That was published, like more than 5 decades ago. And if you were to read your own organization's marketing material, the job postings, the social media, are you going to tell me that Butler was wrong? Maybe. But the wrinkle that he did miss is this. Ageism is not just experienced by older people. It actually runs in every direction against every age. Remember my definitions, rivers, rocks, and rubies, younger workers, middle-aged workers, older workers? Well, there's equal opportunity discrimination for all types of roles and people in the organization, whether you're a river, rock, or ruby. So let me give you some data, because I'm a data guy, and it's brutal. Now, the AARP suggests that 78% of American workers between the ages of 40 and 65 have reported that they've personally experienced or witnessed age discrimination in the workplace. 78%, so 3 out of every 4 people, essentially. In the UK youth have a survey they did with 3,000 young people between the ages of 16 and 25, and guess what? 81% of them felt undervalued, 78% felt patronized, and 75% have been rejected based on their age. EEOC, this ongoing age discrimination claim case, suggests that somewhere between 20 to 25% of all charges brought to the agency are about ageism. SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, suggests that roughly half of managers believe older workers are less competent with technology. And 48% describe older workers, quote, as stubborn. So, if almost everyone over the age of 40 has experienced or seen some form of ageism, and then everyone under the age of 25 has experienced ageism as well, I'm thinking that, the 25 to 40-year-olds, maybe they're not having any sense of ageism. It is everywhere. So back to that story with HCL America. That's not an outlier. There's all kinds of other cases. EEOC has a bunch of them. So here's one more. South Valley Care Center in Albuquerque, New York, February 2026. The EEOC, they've settled an age discrimination and retaliation lawsuit against a long-term care facility for $75,000. Why? Well, according to this lawsuit, a supervisor mocked and harassed older workers in the laundry department because of their ages and treated them less favorably than the younger workers. A long-term care facility. I mean, I know the irony is just writing itself, isn't it? Okay, the second case, Wendy's. A lawsuit filed in January of 2026, the EEOC charged the fast food chain with discriminating against a district manager, someone who had worked for the company since the early 90s. And that discrimination was, yes, you guessed it, on the basis of age. 3 decades of service and one ageist pushed out the door. A third case, Builders FirstSource. This was settled in January of 2026 for just about $50,000, where a 67-year-old assembler at a truss assembly facility in Arlington, Washington, very qualified, willing, working through a staffing agency, and then not. The EEOC, what they find out? Well, they found out that this individual was being torn to shreds through various ageist comments, and then, of course, being fired for being older. Here's a fourth. Why not? J&M Industries in Louisiana. The EEOC, well, they sued the company for firing an employee because she refused to retire when she turned 65. The legal documents include actual statements made by a manager. Quote, "So when are you going to retire?" Quote, "Why don't you retire at 65? Quote, "What is the reason you're not retiring?" 3 weeks after she had no plans to retire, her position, well, spoiler alert, it was eliminated. Go figure, eh? The company hired a man in their 30s for that same job, just as they had told that individual that their job was being eliminated. So yeah, that's in the courts right now. So in the book, The Future of Work is Gray, I argue that ageism actually shows up in 3 distinct ways inside our organization. So I'm going to go through these 3, kind of a Cole's Notes version, if you know what that means. So form number 1, career ageism. This is kind of the structural one, the way job postings filter candidates by age before a human ever sees them. The way that LinkedIn's algorithm, right, it favors certain profile patterns. The way, quote, phrases like recent graduate or digital native, they become coded into language for people like Rivers under the age of 30. Or how about executive search firms, where they quietly give age quarters by the companies hiring them, say, you will hire this type of individual and not that one. Well, that's career ageism, and it's systemic. And it's a way for, the HR or P&C system to prefer certain ages over others without anyone doing anything consciously in which to decide for that individual. The second type, workplace ageism, well, these are like the jokes, the memes, the tropes, the okay boomers, stuff like that. The performance review framed around adaptability or, quote, new energy, language that's really code for being young. The training opportunities that quietly do not get offered to the 59-year-old because, well, they're going to retire in 2 years, right? What's the point? The manager who says of an experienced employee, they might struggle with that new tech called AI. Workplace ageism is a form most often committed by people who would describe themselves as inclusive, but there's irony. And it makes it so toxic because it's invisible to the person committing it. They're not thinking, oh, today, as I wake up and have my cereal, I'm going to discriminate. They just make it sort of perfectly reasonable assumption, and then they don't know often that it's turning out to be something that's discriminatory. Now, the third one, personal ageism. This is the one that kind of lives in your head. It's that voice that tells you at the age of 35, you're too old to switch careers. The voice that tells you at 50 that no one's going to hire you for the role you actually want. The voice that tells you at the age of 65 that you should be quietly winding down rather than leaning in and learning more and taking that new job possibly. Personal ageism is a silent saboteur that you've turned inwards on yourself. And it really does a great job of reliably narrowing your life. Now, all three forms, well, they reinforce each other. Career ageism shapes the systems. Workplace ageism, well, it shapes culture. Personal ageism, it shapes you. And once they're all running, ageism becomes this self-sustaining discrimination from up, above, across, and below. Now, if the moral case is not enough, and I've learned over the years that for some leaders, the moral case is genuinely not enough, let me give you the business case. Ageist organizations, well, they bleed experience dividend. In fact, they complement what I call age debt. They push out the people most loaded with that tacit knowledge, the wisdom, the things that they know what other people just don't know. They restrict the pool of available talent at exactly the moment when the talent pipeline is thinning. They generate those EEOC liabilities that run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars per case. And they damage their employer brand in ways that are now permanent and searchable. More subtly, though, ageist organizations, well, they've got less interesting cultures. The teams are more homogeneous. The decision-making is kind of following like AI, very pattern-bound. And the capacity for genuinely surprising thought drops or ideated moments, well, that surprise is what happens when very different perspectives sit in the same room. And quietly, in the background, candidates, well, they start to notice. Younger workers, those rivers in your organization that you should be courting, they read those company culture pages, the Reddit, the whispers, etc. And they start looking at ages. They start scrolling your social media. They start to form these fast conclusions about whether or not they want to spend their career or a portion of it at a place that, I don't know, just quietly hides its older employees, not age inclusive. So, ageism, it's not just bad ethics, it's bad strategy. And also it's increasingly bad legal hygiene. And you don't need a lawsuit, do you? So a couple moves, well, 4, that you might want to think about. Number 1, how about auditing your job postings? If you were to take a look at every active posting or ones that are sitting there waiting to be posted, and you were to look through words like recent grad, digital native, high energy, young, could you maybe think about that a different way? Number 2, how about auditing your performance review language? So whether you're having annual, biannual, hopefully more frequent than that, maybe monthly, regardless, if a 25-year-old's review uses the word promising and a 60-year-old says something like old and steady, then you got a problem. Both words, they sound semi-positive, but steady or, old, well, it's just wrong, isn't it? Number 3, track promotion and training rates by era. So kind of like river, rocks, and rubies. So if you were to track by gender and ethnicity, okay, so that's one way in which to do it. But are we tracking by age, or at least by eras? There might be some uncomfortable patterns that you notice there. And number 4, try to have one uncomfortable conversation with a senior leader. Ask them out loud, how old is too old to lead at this place? That conversation may tell you everything you need to know about if your organization is ready to dismantle ageism, and if you're a leader, what might you do about that? So, this is episode 4. We're looking ahead to the 5th shade next. What are we going to get into? I'm going to bring all of our 4 shades together. So the demographic bill, the experience conundrum, the pressure points of longevity, those were episodes 1, 2, and 3. And of course, today, episode 4, we talked about the silent saboteur of ageism. What I'm going to try to do is give you a synthesis. It's the structure that turns age debt into what I call the experience dividend. And it's the only episode in this 5-part series I've hesitated to record because it's the one where I have to stop diagnosing and I'm going to start prescribing. And prescription, of course, is much harder than diagnosis. So, Try to run those audit on the job postings, see what's happening there. I bet you'll find at least one phrase that needs to come out. And with that, it's the end of episode 4. This is, of course, 5 Shades of Grey, the Leadership Now Takeover. I'm Dan Pontefract. My new book, The Future of Work is Grey, is either available, depending on when you hear this, or it's not quite out yet. But regardless, in EPUB, audiobook, or hardcover versions. And by the way, the silent saboteur is only silent if you refuse to name it. See you for the last episode.